Welcome also to the Foreign Minister of New Zealand, who I no doubt has been bloody busy keeping an eye on a very dynamic situation in the Middle East. I said when I started the show this morning, New Zealand's government certainly did the one thing it could do in the last couple of days. It said, do we have New Zealanders there? What can we do? What what measures can we take to assist them in any way we can? We sent up a Hercules. I know there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Mr. Peters, thank you for joining us. Has all that changed? Is the ceasefire effective from the reports you're getting back or not?
Well, we'd like to believe that, but that is something that will only be clear in the fullness of time. But in the meantime, our job is and we started off with trying to get 46 people out there. It's blown out now to 139 in Iran. And due to the insecurity of many circumstances, some of which I can't really discuss here, it's going to be a very difficult job, but we're going to do the best we can. We've got teams up there already on the borders set to go, but case by case, in very difficult circumstances.
Okay.
No planes, no trains, no buses, no fuel. It's going to be real hard.
Okay, all right. And until, I guess, there is an all clear, and it's hard to know when you get one, New Zealand as a government has to keep on doing the best it can for its people, for our citizens there, and good on you. Is there more concern about the threat to life and limb for people in Iran than Israel?
Well, it's possibly equal, because if things were to break out and the ceasefire didn't hold, then we're back where we were before. So it's our best position to say to ourselves, imagine the worst is happening and keep on with the intensity of our preparation and work to get these people out, even though for months we told them not to go there.
Yeah. Okay. Does everyone want to get out? Have you managed to assess that?
Well, we assume that they've contacted us because they want to get out.
Yeah.
But as I say, just a few days ago, we're dealing with 46. We thought we had the max.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, and things got really intense and far worse than that, fearful for their lives. Now we've got 139 in Iran to deal with.
All right, okay. And I imagine, and I don't want to breach any security or anything, you drive to a land border with another country, hopefully we have some New Zealand officials there or someone designated to reach them when they get to that border and make sure they're okay. So
yes, we've also got very sad human circumstances. I heard one whinging like nobody yesterday about this. They got to the border and they were complaining about the time getting through. Well, look, we can't handle that. That's other countries' process.
Yeah. All right. And once they're out of Iran, what is our obligation to them then? Do we get them all together and fly them back to New Zealand? You say, that's all right, you're out of danger, enjoy your holiday. How far does our obligation go?
We get them to a safe place where they can make their own arrangements thereafter.
All right. Okay. 130 in Iran, how many in Israel?
Now, 139 in Iran, we've got 115 in Israel at this point in time who've made contact with us.
Okay. And do those 115 all want to come home from Israel as well?
Well, I say they've made contact with us because they want our help.
Okay. All right.
When you try and answer for people you've never met, it's a very dangerous thing to do.
Yeah,
we're finding out their circumstances.
Okay, let's look at the bigger picture then. And look, and just you're a gentleman, Mr. Peters. You were outraged at the use of the C word by a New Zealand journalist and in Parliament, and I see Mr. Trump has dropped an F-bomb. You must have been distinctly unimpressed with that.
Look, the reality is we've got all these international experts and everybody talking about the President of the United States. But I did believe from the word go, given his track record, that the last thing he wanted to do was to be engaged in a war or to take this action. That's why the delay was so long. And also, it is clearly evidenced how frustrated he is with the circumstances.
Yeah.
That's a very human thing to do. And, of course you shouldn't use the word, but and sometimes you get so frustrated. Here you are, your people's resources, your people's safety on the line, your military's on the line, and then you find these frustrating participants who cannot get on.
Yeah.
And it's been going on for all of my life.
Yeah. Mr. Peters, it was amazing. I mean, the Post newspaper told me on Monday the world was on fire. This was World War III. People were clutching at their pills all over Grey Lynn and Thorndon. And it was terrible, and petrol prices were going to go through the roof. You yourself said it was the most serious thing since the Cuban Missile Crisis, and then suddenly it's not.
Well, in the case of the Cuban Missile Crisis, suddenly it wasn't.
Yeah.
When decisive action was taken.
Yeah. Do you believe that in taking out, using its incredible military capabilities to take out the nuclear program, what America essentially did was removed the rationale for Israel to continue its war? In fact, it said that attack stabilized the situation. It kind of gave the Iranians an out and it gave the Israelis an out, because the major bone of contention, the nuclear capability of Iran, was removed. It actually broke a deadlock that could have seen the missiles flying on and on and on. It seems to me almost a Pax Americana, Minister.
Well, I love that expression, but it doesn't apply to this case. The fact is that the Americans are saying that they had the right to take a preemptive strike against a development which the Iranian people, or the leadership, had said they weren't engaged in. But the level of their nuclear enrichment was a breach of all their assurances to the West and to the international bodies and to the United Nations all this time. So in the end, it'll come down to evidentiary proof of what they were doing and whether the United States was entitled to do that.
All right. But the fact is, no matter what they say at the UN or at the NATO meeting, we appear to have a shaky, albeit shaky and uncertain, but we appear to have peace where there was war. That's got to be a good thing for the whole world.
Well, again, Sean, you know, what's extraordinary about the people who feel so free to make comment, as I heard in Parliament yesterday in the debate, it was disgraceful when I think about it, to liken this to the 2003 invasion of Iraq by the United States is just nonsense, as Hipkins said. Never mention the Houthis, never mention Hezbollah, never mention Hamas, never mention any of those things, as though this is all some one party's fault. And the real fact of the matter is that hopefully this means stabilization there. It hopefully means that a number of countries who have been very, very careful. What has Saudi Arabia said about this? What has Egypt said about this? What has Jordan said about this? A whole lot of countries around there have been very, very careful and cautious about what's going on, because they are very much aware of how many of these proxy terrorists Iran was involved with.
And that is the other interesting thing. I think it almost suggests some sort of change in the nature of, if you like, the conflict boundaries between nations there. I was amazed at, if you like, the sanguine nature of many of the Arab nations' response to this. It was almost tacit approval for America and Israel dealing to the threat that Iran posed to stability in the region. And they certainly weren't taking Iran's side, were they?
Well, all I can say is this, and without any chance of refutation, that they know far more about what's going on in the neighborhood than we do.
Yeah.
I went to Egypt to talk to them about it. I spoke to the Palestinian Authority. I spoke to the leadership of Indonesia about this issue. They are acutely aware of the circumstances, and they're not fools. They know that things are going on which they know is destabilizing to their region.
All right. It does make, to be honest, Mr. Peters, the issue of two ministers from the Knesset who were never going to come here, it does make that kind of has faded somewhat into irrelevance over the last, 12 days, hasn't it?
No, not really.